They looked at me like I had wandered into the wrong building when I walked into that engineering workshop. 23 men, all white, all staring at the young black woman who dared to claim her spot at the design table. But they had no idea what I was about to show them. Which country are you listening from? Tell us in the comments below. My name is Maya Johnson, and I've always believed that excellence speaks louder than prejudice. Growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, I was raised by a grandmother who survived the Jim Crow era and a mother who broke barriers as one of the first black engineers at Georgia Tech in the 1980s. They taught me that my mind was my greatest weapon, and that no one could take away what I knew. Grandma Rose used to tell me stories about walking 12 miles to the only school that would accept black children, carrying her books in a flour sack because her family couldn't afford a proper bag. She would describe how white children would throw rocks at her from passing buses, how teachers would give her used textbooks with pages missing, how she had to sit in the back of every classroom and wasn't allowed to ask questions. But she never let those barriers stop her from learning. She would memorize entire chapters because she couldn't take the books home, and she taught herself mathematics by practicing problems in the dirt behind her house. Maya, baby, she would say, holding my small hands in her weathered ones, they can take away your opportunities, they can make your path harder, but they can never take away what's in your mind. Education is the one thing that belongs to you forever. My mother, Dr. Angela Johnson, carried that legacy forward when she became one of only 3 black students in Georgia Tech's engineering program in 1979. She would tell me about study groups that would suddenly change locations without telling her, about professors who would ignore her raised hand for entire semesters, about job interviews where companies would seem surprised that A. Johnson was a black woman. But she persevered, graduating 3rd in her class and eventually becoming the lead structural engineer for Atlanta's MARTA transit system. The door was cracked open just enough for me to squeeze through, Mom would explain. My job is to prop that door open wider so you can walk through with your head held high. Growing up in that household meant that excellence wasn't just expected, it was assumed. My bedroom walls were covered with periodic tables, mathematical formulas, and pictures of Mae Jemison, the first black woman astronaut. Instead of bedtime stories, I fell asleep to tales of Katherine Johnson calculating trajectories for NASA, of Mary Jackson fighting to attend engineering courses, of Dorothy Vaughan learning computer programming to stay relevant in a changing field. I was 8 years old when I built my first solar-powered car for a school science fair. While other kids were making volcanoes with baking soda and vinegar, I was experimenting with photovoltaic cells and aerodynamics. The car was small and crude, but it actually worked, rolling across the gymnasium floor powered entirely by the fluorescent lights overhead. I remember the amazement in my teacher's eyes, the whispered conversations among parents, the way the local newspaper photographer kept taking pictures of me standing next to my project. That moment sparked something inside me that would define the rest of my life. The absolute certainty that I was meant to work with energy systems, to find ways to harness the power of nature for human benefit. High school in Atlanta's suburbs was a preview of the challenges I would face later. I was often the only black student in advanced mathematics and science courses, sitting alone at lab tables while white students partnered with each other. Teachers would praise my work with surprise, as if my intelligence was unexpected rather than cultivated. Guidance counselors would suggest I consider more practical career paths like nursing or teaching, despite my perfect scores in calculus and physics. But I had advantages that many students didn't. A mother who understood the technical challenges I was studying, a grandmother who had faced much worse and survived, and a community of black professionals who served as living proof that success was possible. Dr. Marcus Williams, a chemical engineer who attended our church, became an informal mentor, helping me navigate college applications and scholarship opportunities. Mrs. Patricia Davis, who worked for the Department of Energy, introduced me to renewable energy research and connected me with summer internship programs. The summer before my senior year, I participated in a NASA engineering camp at Johnson Space Center in Houston. For 6 weeks, I worked alongside teenagers from across the country, designing theoretical missions to Mars and building scale models of spacecraft. It was the first time I had been in an environment where my passion for engineering was completely normal, where asking technical questions was encouraged rather than tolerated. One afternoon, while we were calculating fuel requirements for a hypothetical lunar landing, our instructor, Dr. Sarah Chin, pulled me aside. "Maya," she said, "I've been watching your work, and you have an intuitive understanding of energy systems that's rare for someone your age. Have you considered MIT for college? Their mechanical engineering program has some groundbreaking research in sustainable energy." That conversation changed the trajectory of my life. Until that moment, I had been planning to attend Georgia Tech like my mother, staying close to home and following a familiar path. But Dr. Chen's suggestion opened up a world of possibilities I hadn't imagined. Applying to MIT felt like reaching for something impossibly distant. The application required essays about overcoming challenges, and I found myself writing about the subtle isolation of being the only black face in advanced classes, about the way teachers would call on me to represent my entire race's perspective on historical events, about the exhaustion of constantly having to prove that I belonged in academic spaces. The acceptance letter arrived on a cold February morning. I remember standing in our kitchen, hands shaking as I read the words. The admissions committee was impressed by your academic achievements, your innovative approach to engineering challenges, and your commitment to using technology for social benefit. My mother cried when I read it aloud, and Grandma Rose just smiled and said, "I always knew you were going to do something special, baby girl." Moving to Cambridge, Massachusetts, in August felt like stepping into a different universe. MIT's campus was a maze of cutting-edge laboratories, towering libraries, and students who spoke casually about quantum physics and artificial intelligence. My dormitory room overlooked the Charles River, and I would sit by the window in the evenings, watching sailboats drift past while I studied thermodynamics and materials science. The academic rigor was unlike anything I had experienced. Professors expected students to not just learn existing theories but to challenge them, to propose improvements, to think several steps beyond the current state of knowledge. My favorite course was Sustainable Energy Systems, taught by Dr. Robert Kim, whose research on solar panel efficiency had earned him international recognition. Dr. Kim's assignments were legendary for their difficulty. Instead of traditional problem sets, he would present real-world energy challenges and ask students to develop comprehensive solutions. My sophomore year project focused on improving solar panel performance in desert environments, a problem that seemed purely academic at the time but would later become central to my career. I spent months researching how extreme heat affects photovoltaic efficiency, studying the cellular structures of desert plants that thrive in harsh conditions, and developing theoretical models for biomimetic cooling systems. The final project required a 40-page technical report and a presentation to a panel of industry experts. Standing in front of that panel, 3 professors and 2 engineers from Siemens, I felt the weight of every ancestor who had been denied educational opportunities. I thought about Grandma Rose memorizing lessons she couldn't take home, about my mother sitting alone in study groups, about all the brilliant minds that had been overlooked because of the color of their skin. My presentation on biomimetic solar cooling lasted 35 minutes, followed by 20 minutes of technical questions that probed every aspect of my research. When I finished, Dr. Kim smiled broadly and said, "Ms. Johnson, this is exactly the kind of innovative thinking that advances entire fields of study." That project became the foundation for my senior thesis, which earned recognition from the Department of Energy and ultimately led to my first job offer. But more importantly, it taught me that my unique perspective, shaped by growing up black in America, by understanding both struggle and resilience, could contribute something valuable to engineering innovation. I graduated summa cum laude from MIT with a degree in mechanical engineering, specializing in sustainable energy systems. My senior thesis on solar panel efficiency earned recognition from the Department of Energy, and I had job offers from 3 Fortune 500 companies. Life felt like it was unfolding exactly as planned. I was 24, ambitious, and ready to change the world one innovation at a time. When I accepted a position at Meridian Technologies, a leading renewable energy company in Denver, Colorado, I thought I was stepping into my dream job. The company had an impressive portfolio of green energy projects, and their mission statement spoke about diverse perspectives driving innovation. On paper, everything looked perfect. The decision to move to Colorado hadn't been easy. I had offers from companies in Atlanta where I could stay close to family, and from firms in Boston, where I had built connections during my MIT years. But Meridian Technologies offered something unique: the opportunity to work on cutting-edge renewable energy projects with real-world impact, plus the chance to experience life in a different part of the country. My mother had mixed feelings about my choice. "Baby, you know I support your dreams," she said over dinner at our favorite restaurant in Atlanta. "But Denver is different. It's not the South, but it's not Boston either. You're going to be starting over in a place where people don't know your family, don't know your background, don't know what you're capable of." "Mom, that might actually be a good thing," I replied. "Maybe it's time for me to succeed based purely on my work, without people making assumptions about where I come from or what barriers I've had to overcome." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Just promise me you'll remember what Grandma Rose always said: never let anyone convince you that you don't belong somewhere you've earned the right to be." The apartment hunt in Denver was my first real taste of subtle discrimination. I had excellent credit, a solid job offer and references from MIT professors, but I noticed a pattern in how landlords responded to my inquiries. Phone conversations would be warm and encouraging until I showed up for apartment viewings. Suddenly, units that had been available would be pending other applications, or landlords would mention additional requirements that hadn't been discussed over the phone. After 3 weeks of searching, I finally found a landlord who seemed genuinely pleased to rent to a young professional. Mrs. Henderson, a retired teacher in her 70s, owned a small apartment building in the Highland neighborhood. When I told her I was an engineer at Meridian Technologies, her eyes lit up. "My late husband was an engineer," she said warmly. "He would have been so proud to know that brilliant young women like you are carrying on that tradition. The apartment is yours if you want it." I remember my first day walking into the sleek glass building, my portfolio tucked under my arm, wearing my favorite navy blazer that my mother had given me for graduation. The blazer had been her present to me at my MIT graduation ceremony, and she had whispered in my ear as she helped me put it on, "This belonged to your grandmother Rose." She wore it to her first job interview at the hospital where she worked as a nurse after she finally got her degree at age 45. It's seen success before and it will see success again. The receptionist, a kind older woman named Carol, smiled warmly and said, "You must be Maya. We're so excited to have you join the engineering team." That moment filled me with such hope and pride. Carol had a picture of her granddaughter on her desk, a young Latina girl in a robotics club t-shirt. "She wants to be an engineer just like you," Carol said. "It means so much to her to see women in this field." The engineering department occupied the entire third floor, with an open layout that encouraged collaboration. Large windows overlooked the Rocky Mountains, and the walls were covered with patents and design schematics from successful projects. It felt like a place where ideas could flourish, where innovation was truly valued. My supervisor, Dr. Patricia Williams, was a brilliant woman in her 50s who had designed some of the company's most successful wind turbine systems. During our initial meeting, she outlined my role in the upcoming solar panel optimization project, a major contract with the city of Phoenix that could revolutionize how desert communities harness solar energy. The project was worth $12 million, and the winning design would be implemented across Arizona's public buildings. "Maya," Dr. Williams said, leaning forward with intensity, "your research from MIT is exactly what we need for this project. I specifically requested you for this team because I believe you have the innovative thinking that will set us apart from our competitors." Those words meant everything to me. Finally, I was somewhere that valued my intellect, my education, my potential. I spent my first week reviewing existing designs, analyzing efficiency data, and developing preliminary concepts for improving solar panel performance in extreme heat conditions. The engineering team consisted of 12 people, and initially, everyone seemed professional and welcoming. There was David Chin, a solar engineer from California, Rebecca Martinez, who specialized in materials science, and James Thompson, a veteran engineer who had been with the company for 15 years. During coffee breaks and lunch meetings, conversations flowed easily about technical challenges, industry trends, and shared projects. I rented a small apartment in the Highland neighborhood, with a view of downtown Denver's skyline. On weekends, I explored the city, hiking in the foothills, visiting art galleries, discovering local coffee shops where I could sketch design ideas in my notebook. Colorado felt like a fresh start, a place where I could build something meaningful. Everything changed 3 weeks into my employment when the company announced the formation of a special task force for the Phoenix project. This wasn't just another assignment, it was a competition. Meridian Technologies would be sending their best design to compete against 4 other major engineering firms for the contract. The winning company would not only receive the initial $12 million but also preferential consideration for similar projects across the Southwest. Dr. Williams called a department meeting to announce that she would be selecting a small team of the company's top engineers to work exclusively on this project. The chosen team would have access to advanced modeling software, a dedicated laboratory space, and direct consultation with the company's senior partners. Most importantly, the lead engineer whose design was selected would receive a $50,000 bonus and fast-track consideration for promotion to senior engineer. As she began reading the list of selected team members, my heart raced with anticipation. This was exactly the kind of opportunity one had dreamed about, a chance to prove myself on a project with real-world impact. The Phoenix Solar Optimization Task Force will consist of the following engineers, Dr. Williams announced: James Thompson, David Chin, Michael Roberts, Stephen Walsh, Rebecca Martinez. The list continued, and with each name that wasn't mine, my stomach dropped a little further. When she finished reading the 8 names, mine wasn't among them. After the meeting, I approached Dr. Williams privately. I was hoping to discuss the Phoenix Project selection, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Given my research background in solar efficiency and the fact that you mentioned my MIT work was exactly what the project needed, I'm curious about why I wasn't selected for the task force. Dr. Williams looked uncomfortable, avoiding direct eye contact. Maya, you're still very new to the company. This project requires engineers with extensive industry experience. The clients expect seasoned professionals, people who have proven themselves over years of field work. But Rebecca Martinez was hired just 2 months before me, I pointed out. And David Chin has been here for only 6 months. Well, they have different backgrounds, she replied vaguely. Don't worry, there will be other opportunities for you to prove yourself. That phrase, prove yourself, echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. Hadn't I already proven myself by graduating from one of the world's top engineering programs? By conducting research that earned national recognition? By being specifically recruited for this position? The real blow came the following Monday when I discovered that the company had decided to make the Phoenix Project selection process more democratic. Instead of Dr. Williams choosing the team, they announced an internal design competition. Any engineer in the department could submit a preliminary design proposal, and the 8 best submissions would earn spots on the task force. I was thrilled. This was exactly the kind of merit-based opportunity one had been hoping for. I spent the entire weekend working on my proposal, incorporating insights from my MIT research and developing a revolutionary approach to solar panel positioning that could increase efficiency by 37% in high-temperature environments. My design focused on a dynamic tracking system combined with advanced cooling technology that would allow solar panels to maintain optimal performance even when desert temperatures exceeded 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The innovation lay in a biomimetic approach, inspired by how desert plants orient themselves to minimize heat absorption while maximizing light capture. I submitted my proposal on Wednesday morning, confident that the technical merit would speak for itself. The company had promised that all submissions would be reviewed blindly, no names, just design concepts and supporting data. On Friday afternoon, Dr. Williams announced the 8 selected proposals. Once again, my name wasn't called. But this time something felt fundamentally wrong. I had seen some of the other submissions, and while they were competent, none demonstrated the level of innovation or technical sophistication that my design offered. James Thompson's proposal was essentially a minor modification of existing technology. Michael Roberts had submitted a design that was almost identical to a system already being used in Nevada. After the announcement, I requested a meeting with Dr. Williams to review the selection criteria. She seemed nervous, shuffling papers on her desk before finally saying, Maya, your design was interesting. But the review committee felt it was too theoretical, too risky for such an important client. Too theoretical? I asked, genuinely confused. I included detailed engineering specifications, cost analysis, and performance modeling. Which aspects seem theoretical to you? Well, the biomimetic approach. It's just not something our clients are used to. They prefer more traditional solutions. I pulled out my copy of the proposal and walked her through each section, explaining the solid engineering principles behind every innovation. As I spoke, I noticed her growing discomfort, and finally she interrupted. Maya, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you have to understand, this industry has certain expectations. Clients want to work with engineers who fit the traditional profile of what they expect from a senior engineering firm. The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. She had just admitted, albeit indirectly, that my race and gender were factors in the selection process. My mind reeled as I processed what had just happened. Are you saying that my qualifications are less important than my appearance? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Williams backpedaled quickly. No, that's not what I meant. I'm just saying that in this industry, experience and cultural fit are very important. You're still learning how things work here. I left that meeting feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. The phrase cultural fit rang in my ears, a euphemism I had heard about but never experienced so blatantly. It was corporate speak for, you don't look like us. That evening, I called my mother in Atlanta. Through tears, I told her what had happened. She listened quietly, and when I finished, she said, Baby, I'm so sorry you're going through this. I had hoped things would be different for your generation, but some things change slower than others. What should I do, Mom? Should I file a complaint? Looking for another job? The There was a long pause before she answered. Maya, let me tell you something your grandmother told me when I was facing similar challenges at Georgia Tech. She said, Angela, you can't control how people see you, but you can control how well you do your work. Sometimes the best way to fight discrimination is to be so good that they can't ignore you. But Mom, I am good. My design was objectively better than the ones they selected. Technical excellence isn't enough if they won't even consider it. You're right, baby. And that's the hardest lesson to learn. That fairness isn't guaranteed even when you do everything right. But you have something they don't expect. You have the knowledge and the determination to succeed despite them, not because of them. Maya, she continued, her voice growing stronger, you are brilliant and you are strong. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. But you also need to be smart about how you handle this. Document everything. And remember, the best revenge is success. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment looking out at the Denver skyline, feeling more alone than I had since arriving in Colorado. The mountain view that had initially filled me with optimism now seemed to mock my isolation. I was thousands of miles from my family, working for people who saw my capabilities as secondary to my appearance, and beginning to question whether I had made a terrible mistake in coming here. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation with Dr. Williams, analyzing every word, every gesture, every pause. The phrase cultural fit echoed in my mind like a broken record. I had heard the term before in academic discussions about workplace diversity, but experiencing it directly felt like being slapped with a velvet glove, polite on the surface but brutal in its impact. I spent hours researching the concept online, reading articles about coded language in hiring and promotion decisions. What I discovered was both enlightening and depressing. Cultural fit was widely recognized as a euphemism that allowed organizations to discriminate based on race, gender, or class while maintaining plausible deniability. Companies could reject qualified candidates or exclude capable employees from opportunities while claiming their decisions were based on legitimate business considerations. The most painful part was realizing how naive I had been. I had genuinely believed that my MIT education and technical expertise would be enough to overcome any biases. I had thought that the renewable energy industry, with its progressive values and focus on innovation, would be different from the traditional corporate environments where my mother had faced discrimination decades earlier. But here I was, experiencing the same subtle exclusion that countless black professionals had described in books, articles, and whispered conversations at family gatherings. The realization that my generation hadn't escaped these challenges was devastating. Over the next few weeks, I watched the Phoenix Task Force meet in the conference room while I was assigned to routine maintenance projects, reviewing existing installations, updating software documentation, and conducting efficiency audits on older systems. Work that any recent graduate could handle, not the kind of challenging projects I had been promised when I was hired. The isolation was subtle but persistent. Lunch invitations became less frequent. Colleagues who had previously included me in technical discussions began speaking in hushed tones that stopped when I approached. I wasn't being actively excluded, but I wasn't being actively included either. The change was gradual enough that I questioned whether I was being paranoid. Was Rebecca Martinez really avoiding eye contact during department meetings, or was I imagining it? When David Chin stopped explaining complex concepts to me during coffee breaks, was it because he thought I was competent enough not to need explanations, or because he had decided I wasn't worth the effort? The ambiguity was exhausting. Each interaction required mental energy to decode, leaving me emotionally drained by the end of every workday. I found myself second-guessing casual conversations, analyzing tone and body language for signs of disrespect or dismissal. The hypervigilance was a survival mechanism, but it was also a prison. The most painful part was watching the Phoenix project develop. Through conversations I overheard and documents I glimpsed, it became clear that the task force was struggling with the technical challenges I had specifically addressed in my rejected proposal. James Thompson's traditional approach was yielding efficiency rates far below what the client expected, and the team was scrambling to find solutions. During one department meeting, David Chin mentioned that they were having difficulty with heat management in their current design. The panels are losing significant efficiency when temperatures exceed 110 degrees, he reported. We need a breakthrough in cooling technology or we might lose this contract. I bit my tongue, knowing that my biomimetic cooling system could solve their problem immediately. But I hadn't been invited to contribute, and offering unsolicited suggestions would likely be seen as presumptuous or desperate. Kevin Liu added, "We've tried conventional cooling methods, but they're either too expensive or too energy-intensive to be practical. The client wants innovation, but they also want proven technology. That's exactly the problem, Patricia Morrison chimed in. How do you innovate with proven technology? It's a contradiction. I wanted to scream. The solution was sitting in my rejected proposal, gathering dust in Dr. Williams' filing cabinet. My biomimetic approach used proven heat exchange principles applied in a novel way that mimicked natural cooling strategies. It was innovative but grounded in established engineering principles. It was exactly what they needed. Instead, I sat silently, watching talented engineers struggle with a problem I had already solved. 2 weeks later, the situation became even more surreal. During a casual conversation in the break room, Michael Roberts mentioned that they were considering hiring an outside consultant to help with thermal management issues. Dr. Williams is looking at bringing in someone from the University of Arizona who specializes in desert solar installations, he said. Apparently, this person has developed some kind of bio-inspired cooling system. My heart stopped. They were planning to pay thousands of dollars to an outside consultant for expertise on the exact same biomimetic principles I had proposed in my rejected design. Rebecca Martinez nodded enthusiastically. That sounds perfect. We need someone with real expertise in innovative cooling technologies. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. They would rather pay an external consultant than acknowledge that one of their own employees had already developed a superior solution. That afternoon, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I requested another meeting with Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams, I understand the Phoenix team is considering hiring a consultant for thermal management issues. She looked surprised that I knew about the consultant discussion. Where did you hear about that? It was mentioned in the break room. I wanted to offer my assistance before you invest in outside expertise. Maya, I appreciate your eagerness to help, but this project requires specialized knowledge of desert solar applications. I placed a copy of my MIT thesis on her desk. Dr. Williams, my graduate research focused specifically on solar panel efficiency in extreme heat environments. I published papers on biomimetic cooling strategies that are directly applicable to the Phoenix project's challenges. She glanced at the thesis without really looking at it. Maya, I'm sure your academic work was very thorough, but practical application is different from theoretical research. The consultant you're considering from the University of Arizona, Dr. Patricia Hernandez, actually cited my research in her most recent paper on bio-inspired solar cooling. I can show you the citation. Dr. Williams shifted uncomfortably. Well, Dr. Hernandez has industry experience that I don't have because I haven't been given the opportunity to gain it, I finished. Dr. Williams, you're about to pay thousands of dollars for expertise that already exists within your own engineering department. Maya, I understand your frustration, but the decision has already been made. Dr. Hernandez will be joining us next week for initial consultations. Walking out of that meeting, I felt something crystallize inside me. The company was willing to spend money they didn't need to spend and delay progress they couldn't afford to delay, all to avoid acknowledging that their young black female engineer had solutions they needed. The emotional toll was exhausting. I began second-guessing every interaction, wondering if colleagues' responses were influenced by unconscious bias. When Michael Roberts explained a concept I already understood, was he being condescending because I was black, because I was a woman, or just because he assumed I was inexperienced? When Rebecca Martinez received credit for an idea that sounded remarkably similar to one I had mentioned weeks earlier, was it coincidence or something more deliberate? I started eating lunch alone, partly to avoid the awkwardness of forced conversations and partly to preserve my emotional energy for the actual work. The mountain view from the cafeteria became my refuge, a reminder that there was a bigger world beyond the politics and prejudice of corporate life. My apartment, which had initially felt like a symbol of independence and achievement, began to feel like a sanctuary where I could drop the exhausting performance of maintaining professional composure. I spent evenings reading engineering journals, working on personal projects, and calling friends from MIT who understood the technical challenges I was facing, even if they couldn't relate to the social dynamics. One evening, my MIT classmate Jennifer Chang called to check in. Jennifer was Chinese American and had taken a job with a tech company in San Francisco. We had often studied together during graduate school, and she was one of the few people who fully understood both my technical capabilities and my professional aspirations. Maya, you sound exhausted, she said. What's going on out there? I told her about the Phoenix project, the rejected proposal, the cultural fit comments, and the outside consultant situation. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making frustrated noises. This is insane, Jennifer finally said. Your biomimetic cooling research was groundbreaking. Half our professors are still talking about it, and they're hiring a consultant to solve a problem you already solved. I don't know what to do, Jen. Part of me wants to fight this, but I'm worried about being labeled as difficult or not a team player. Maya, you are one of the most brilliant engineers I know. Don't let these people gaslight you into thinking otherwise. You have options here, but you need to think strategically about how to use them. 3 months into my employment, the situation reached a breaking point. Dr. Williams called me into her office for my quarterly performance review. I had been hoping for positive feedback, as I had completed every assigned project on time and exceeded quality expectations on most tasks. Instead, she handed me a review that was lukewarm at best. Maya, your technical skills are solid, she began, but we have some concerns about your integration with the team culture. Several colleagues have mentioned that you seem distant, not fully engaged with collaborative efforts. I stared at her in disbelief. Distant? I haven't been invited to participate in any collaborative efforts beyond routine assignments. Well, sometimes integration requires taking initiative. You could be more proactive about joining conversations, suggesting ideas, and showing enthusiasm for the team's projects. The Phoenix project that I was excluded from despite having the most relevant research background? Dr. Williams shifted uncomfortably. Maya, that kind of attitude is exactly what I'm talking about. You seem to have a chip on your shoulder about that selection process. Moving forward, we need to see more positivity and team spirit. The review recommended that I work on professional development and cultural adaptation. Reading between the lines, I understood that I was being criticized for not accepting my marginalization gracefully enough. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I spent the weekend researching the competition rules for the Phoenix Solar Project. The client, Arizona Public Service, had published detailed specifications for the project along with submission guidelines. Any qualified engineering firm could submit a proposal, and the evaluation would be based entirely on technical merit, cost-effectiveness, and innovation. What I discovered was illuminating. There was nothing preventing individual engineers from submitting proposals independently, as long as they met the professional certification requirements and could demonstrate the resources to execute the project. I had maintained my professional engineer license from Massachusetts, and Colorado had reciprocity agreements that allowed me to practice engineering in the state. My MIT research had been funded by a Department of Energy grant that I still had access to for continued development. Most importantly, I had spent months refining my biomimetic solar design, and it was significantly superior to anything the Phoenix Task Force had developed. On Monday morning, I submitted my own proposal directly to Arizona Public Service. My design was comprehensive, a revolutionary solar panel system that combined dynamic sun tracking with bio-inspired cooling mechanisms, all integrated with smart grid technology that could adapt to real-time energy demands. The efficiency projections were 43% higher than conventional systems, and the cost analysis showed a return on investment within 6 years instead of the typical 8 to 10 years. I included my MIT research, peer-reviewed publications, and detailed engineering specifications that demonstrated not just what the system could do, but exactly how it would work. Every calculation was triple-checked. Every innovation was grounded in solid scientific principles. 3 days later, I received a call from Arizona Public Service requesting a presentation meeting. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the project director, sounded impressed. Ms. Johnson, your proposal is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we were hoping to see. When can you come to Phoenix to present your design? The presentation was scheduled for the following Friday, the same day that Meridian Technologies was scheduled to present their proposal. I requested the day off from work, telling Dr. Williams that I had a personal matter to attend to. She approved the request without asking questions, probably assuming I was job hunting or dealing with family issues. The flight to Phoenix gave me time to rehearse my presentation and organize my thoughts. I was nervous but also exhilarated. This was the opportunity one had been preparing for my entire career, a chance to let my work speak for itself, free from the politics and prejudice that had been holding me back. Arizona Public Service's headquarters was an impressive building with solar panels covering the roof, a perfect setting for my presentation. Dr. Martinez greeted me warmly and introduced me to the evaluation committee, 3 engineers, 2 project managers, and a financial analyst. Ms. Johnson, Dr. Martinez began, we've reviewed your proposal extensively and we're very interested in your biomimetic approach. Can you walk us through how this system would perform in Arizona's extreme heat conditions? For the next hour, I presented my design with passion and precision. I explained how desert plants like the Palo Verde tree minimize heat absorption while maximizing photosynthesis, and how those principles could be adapted to solar panel technology. I demonstrated the cooling system using fluid dynamics models, showed efficiency projections under various temperature conditions, and outlined the smart grid integration that would allow the system to adapt to peak energy demands. The committee asked challenging technical questions, and I answered each one with confidence and detail. They inquired about maintenance requirements, scalability, long-term durability, and cost comparisons with existing technology. Every question reinforced how thoroughly I had researched and developed the design. When I finished, Dr. Martinez smiled broadly. "Ms. Johnson, this is exactly the kind of innovative solution we were hoping to find. Your approach addresses every major challenge we've identified with solar energy in desert environments." The financial analyst added, "The cost projections are also very competitive. If your efficiency claims hold up in practice, this system would save the state millions of dollars over its operational lifetime." As I prepared to leave, Dr. Martinez mentioned, "By the way, we have another presentation this afternoon from Meridian Technologies. Are you familiar with their work?" My heart skipped a beat. Yes, I'm aware of their reputation in the industry. Their proposal was competent but fairly conventional. Nothing like the innovation you've shown us today. I flew back to Denver that evening knowing that I had given the presentation of my lifetime. But I also knew that the real test would come when Arizona Public Service made their decision. The call came on Tuesday morning while I was reviewing efficiency reports for a wind farm in Kansas. Dr. Martinez's voice was jubilant. "Ms. Johnson, congratulations. Arizona Public Service has selected your biomimetic solar design for the Phoenix Renewable Energy Project. Your proposal scored highest in every evaluation category: technical innovation, cost-effectiveness, and implementation feasibility." I had to sit down. After months of being marginalized and dismissed, I had just won a $12 million contract competing against some of the most established engineering firms in the Southwest. "There is one requirement," Dr. Martinez continued. "Given the scope of this project, we need assurance that you have the infrastructure and support team necessary for implementation. Do you have partnership arrangements with a major engineering firm?" This was the moment I had been hoping for. "Actually, I am currently employed by Meridian Technologies, and I believe this project would be an excellent opportunity for collaboration between my independent research and their implementation capabilities." "Perfect. Can you arrange a meeting with your supervisor to discuss the partnership details?" After hanging up, I sat quietly for several minutes, processing what had just happened. Then I walked to Dr. Williams' office and knocked on her door. "Dr. Williams, I need to speak with you about the Phoenix Solar Project." She looked up from her computer with mild interest. "Oh yes, we're still waiting to hear back from Arizona Public Service. James thinks we have a good chance, but the competition was quite intense." "Actually," I said, sitting down across from her desk, "I have some news about that. Arizona Public Service has selected a design for the project." "Really? That's wonderful. When do we start implementation?" "Well, that depends on whether Meridian Technologies is interested in partnering with the winning designer." Dr. Williams looked confused. "What do you mean?" "We submitted the proposal through James Thompson's team. I pulled out the contract paperwork that Arizona Public Service had emailed me. Dr. Williams, I independently submitted a proposal to Arizona Public Service, and they have selected my biomimetic solar design for the Phoenix project. The contract is worth $12 million, and they've requested that I partner with an established engineering firm for implementation." The color drained from her face as she read the contract details. "You submitted your own proposal? The same proposal that was rejected as too theoretical during your internal selection process." Dr. Williams stared at the paperwork for several long moments. "I don't understand. When did you?" "I submitted the proposal the Monday after my quarterly review, when you suggested I work on cultural adaptation. It seems that Arizona Public Service was more interested in innovation than cultural fit." The implications were sinking in. Not only had I won the contract that Meridian Technologies desperately wanted, but I had done it with the exact design they had rejected. The company's most prestigious project of the year would now depend on their most marginalized employee. Dr. Williams cleared her throat nervously. "Maya, this is incredible news. Congratulations. I'm sure we can work out a partnership arrangement that benefits everyone." "I hope so," I replied calmly. Because Arizona Public Service was very impressed with the technical innovation, and they're expecting the same level of excellence in the implementation phase. Within hours, word had spread throughout the engineering department. The same colleagues who had been excluding me from conversations were suddenly eager to discuss my design concepts. James Thompson, whose conventional approach had been soundly defeated, approached me with a mixture of respect and embarrassment. "Maya, I have to admit, I didn't fully understand your biomimetic approach when you first mentioned it. After seeing the Arizona Public Service evaluation, I realize how revolutionary your cooling system really is. Would you be willing to walk me through the technical details?" The irony was not lost on me. The design that had been dismissed as too risky and theoretical was now being studied as a breakthrough innovation. The company's senior partners scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss the partnership terms. Suddenly, I wasn't just another junior engineer, I was the key to Meridian Technologies' biggest contract in years. During the partnership negotiations, I insisted on specific terms. I would serve as the lead engineer for the Phoenix project, with full authority over technical decisions. I would receive the standard project bonus that had been promised to the winning designer. And most importantly, I would be fast-tracked for promotion to senior engineer, with a salary adjustment to reflect my new status. The partners agreed to every demand. 6 months later, I stood in the Arizona desert watching the installation of the first biomimetic solar array in North America. The panels moved gracefully throughout the day, following the sun's path while maintaining optimal temperatures through the bio-inspired cooling system. Early performance data showed efficiency rates even higher than my projections, a 47% improvement over conventional systems. Dr. Martinez from Arizona Public Service joined me at the installation site. "Maya, this project is exceeding all our expectations. We're already getting inquiries from other states about implementing your design. California wants to pilot this system in the Mojave Desert, and Texas is interested in adapting it for their grid infrastructure." As I watched the sun reflect off the innovative solar panels that had emerged from months of rejection and marginalization, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The casual dismissals, the coded language about cultural fit, the assumption that my ideas were too theoretical, all of it had been proven wrong by the objective measure of technical excellence. But more than professional vindication, I had learned something profound about resilience and self-worth. For months, I had allowed other people's biases to make me question my own abilities. I had internalized their doubt, wondering if maybe I really wasn't ready for challenging projects, if maybe my ideas really were too unconventional. The truth was simpler and more powerful. Excellence speaks for itself, but sometimes you have to create your own platform to let it be heard. Standing in that desert, watching my innovation generate clean energy for thousands of homes, I thought about all the barriers that had been placed in my path. Each obstacle had taught me something valuable. The exclusion from the Phoenix Task Force had forced me to develop independence and self-reliance. The rejection of my proposal had motivated me to refine and perfect my design. The dismissive comments about cultural fit had strengthened my resolve to succeed on my own terms. I received a letter from a young Latina engineering student at Arizona State University who had read about the project in a trade publication. "Ms. Johnson," she wrote, "seeing your success gives me hope that I can make it in this field too. Thank you for proving that innovation comes from all kinds of minds." That letter meant more to me than the bonus check or the promotion or the industry recognition. It reminded me that breaking barriers isn't just about personal achievement, it's about creating opportunities for the next generation of engineers who might not fit the traditional profile. A month after the Phoenix installation, I received a call from Dr. Patricia Hernandez, the University of Arizona professor who had almost been hired as a consultant for the original Meridian project. She had heard about my success and wanted to collaborate on a research paper about biomimetic cooling systems. "Maya," she said, "I have to be honest with you. When Meridian Technologies contacted me about consulting on their solar project, I told them they should look at your MIT research first. I couldn't understand why they were seeking outside expertise when they had someone with your background on staff." "You recommended my work to them?" I asked, surprised. "Of course. Your research is some of the most innovative work being done in this field. I actually use your papers as required reading in my graduate courses." Learning that an outside expert had recommended my work while my own employer was dismissing it as too theoretical was both validating and infuriating. It confirmed what I had suspected. The problem wasn't the quality of my ideas, but the preconceptions about who was capable of having those ideas. My mother was right, the best revenge is success. But success isn't just about proving doubters wrong. It's about proving to yourself that your dreams are valid, your ideas have value, and your perspective brings something unique and necessary to the world. 6 months after the Phoenix project went online, I was promoted to senior engineer and given responsibility for Meridian's new Biomimetic Energy Solutions division. The company that had once questioned whether I was ready for challenging projects now marketed my innovations as their signature technology. Dr. Williams, who had delivered those crushing performance reviews and cultural fit lectures, now introduced me at industry conferences as one of our most innovative engineers. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I had learned to focus on the work rather than dwelling on past slights. Today, as a senior engineer at Meridian Technologies, I make sure that innovative ideas are evaluated on their technical merit, not on whether they come from someone who looks like what people expect an engineer to look like. I mentor young engineers from diverse backgrounds, helping them navigate the subtle and not-so-subtle challenges they might face. I instituted a new policy for project selection that requires blind review of all proposals, truly blind, with identifying information removed and evaluated by panels that include engineers from outside our immediate department. I also established partnerships with HBCUs and Hispanic-serving institutions to create internship programs that bring diverse talent into our pipeline. The most rewarding part of my new role is watching young engineers flourish when given genuine opportunities. Last year, I hired Marcus Thompson, a brilliant young black engineer from Howard University, who developed an innovative wind turbine design that's now being implemented across the Midwest. I also brought in Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, a Latina engineer whose research on tidal energy systems has opened up entirely new markets for our company. When these young engineers bring me their ideas, I remember what it felt like to have my innovations dismissed without serious consideration. I make sure they know that their perspectives are valued, their ideas are welcome, and their success is my success. The biomimetic solar design has now been implemented in 7 states, generating clean energy for hundreds of thousands of homes while saving millions of dollars in energy costs. But more importantly, it has opened doors for other unconventional approaches to engineering challenges. When I walk into a conference room now, people listen to my ideas with respect and attention. Not because of my race or gender, but because of the quality of my work and the strength of my innovations. That's all I ever wanted, to be judged by the content of my contributions, not the color of my skin or the assumptions people make about who belongs in engineering. But I also understand now that representation matters in ways I hadn't fully appreciated when I was younger. When young women of color see me presenting at conferences, leading technical teams and receiving industry recognition, they see possibilities for themselves that might not have existed otherwise. Last month, I was invited to speak at my alma mater, MIT, about careers in renewable energy. After my presentation, a young black woman approached me with tears in her eyes. "Ms. Johnson," she said, "I've been struggling with whether I belong in engineering. Seeing your success reminds me that there's room for people like us in this field." I thought about my grandmother Rose, who memorized lessons she couldn't take home, and my mother, who sat alone in study groups but never gave up. I thought about all the barriers they had broken so that I could walk through doors they had forced open. "There's not just room," I told her. "The field needs what you have to offer. Your perspective, your background, your way of seeing problems, that's exactly what engineering needs to solve the challenges we're facing." They looked at me like I didn't belong in that workshop 6 years ago. Some days the memory of those stares still stings. But I realize now that their perception of me was never about me, it was about the limitations of their own imagination. I didn't need their permission to excel. I just needed the courage to bet on myself, the persistence to pursue excellence despite obstacles, and the wisdom to know that my worth wasn't determined by their acceptance. In the end, they didn't choose me. But success chose me anyway. And that made all the difference. The desert sun continues to power communities across the Southwest through panels that move like living things, reaching toward light while staying cool under pressure. Just like the engineer who designed them. When young engineers ask me for advice about dealing with discrimination and bias in the workplace, I tell them what my grandmother Rose told my mother and what my mother told me: you can't control how people see you, but you can control how well you do your work. But I also tell them something new that I learned through my own experience. Sometimes the best way to fight discrimination isn't to convince people to give you opportunities, it's to create your own opportunities and do the work so well that they can't ignore you. Excellence is still the best revenge. But excellence combined with courage, persistence, and strategic thinking? That's how you change the world.